This season is really, I think, diving into the complex relationship Lottie has with her visions, which I'm loving. Can you talk about that and sort of portraying both the pain and confusion they cause, but also this like euphoric empowerment as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lottie is such an interesting person. She's kind of grown up not really trusting her brain and, her family kind of constantly saying that something's wrong with her. And at the beginning of the season, I talked with Bart and Ashley and just we kind of had this discussion of this line she walks, is it her past trauma, the trauma that's going on now, the wilderness, and does she have a gift? So it's kind of this constant battle to stay on this line and not lean too far each way. But I think this season we see her a bit more confident in the visions that she's seeing or whatever they are. And I think that kind of stems from Laura Lee and the connection they had before she crashed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so fascinating, and I love that there's a show that's sort of representing the complexity of sort of mental health and in a way I've personally battled with mental health issues and I think that it's really kind of also talking about this acceptance that we need to have for the darker parts of ourselves or what we think are the darker parts of ourselves and what that even means to have a dark part of yourself.
Mhm.
And I think that this season and through sort of Lottie's through your beautiful portrayal of this character, it's really giving kind of a voice to that.
Mhm.
Um, I want to talk about too about how like the show just does such a wonderful job at portraying trauma, but not even portraying it, but sort of like attempting to understand it and honoring it. Why is it important to kind of continue to not only honor trauma, but also represent how it's nonlinear and its complicated nature on screen?
Yeah, I think that's our show does a great job, especially it kind of is similar to portray how it portrays women and all our different facets when and how we are in high school and the idea that people have of younger girls or women. I think it's interesting how each character kind of takes on the trauma and how it reflects in them each differently, and it shows the broad array of what it is. And it's not this, I think, when I had this conversation with Bart and Ashley at the beginning of the season and wanting to walk this fine line with Lottie, especially because as someone who, I mean, the fans are probably leaning more towards her being a villain, and it was really important to me that someone that could come across as a villain wasn't just that because of their mental illness. I think there's a lot of that in this industry. But yeah, I think the show does a really beautiful job of showing the complexities of it and how people can deal with it and how it can affect them in different ways. Wow, sorry, that was not
Oh,
a concise thought.
oh, that was beautiful. I think it's like, it's so true. I think that we're always searching for, gosh, like in this show, in life, we're always searching for, um, to see the world through like a black or white lens. And it's like, it's gray. And I think what I get like almost frustrated, I get very protective over the show and these characters because I see them as so human. And I think that it is really fascinating how, especially with the whole cannibalism of it all, how it's like, oh my gosh, like these girls are terrible. They're, I'm like, I'm like, hey, like it is not as easy as that. And I think that what y'all have done so brilliantly, and this is through your performances, it's through the writing, is to show that life is not that simple, and that we need to be careful about villainizing, I think, characters on screen and people in real life as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even Simone and I had conversations while we're doing press. We got a few questions of like, is Lottie's the villain of this and that? And I'm like, I don't know. I will fight to the end of the day. She does everything to the best of her ability. And I always have a hard time kind of explaining her. And I think about it in the same context of like when someone asks me to describe who I am and break myself down, I'm like, I have no idea how to begin with that. And I feel like Lottie, I'm very protective of her because Lottie and I share the same brain pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, who's to say that also, what I think is so cool about having the two different timelines is that we see growth, we see steps forward, we see steps back. And I think it's so true. Like, it's so, how can you describe one human? Like, and depending on what day, depending on what year, depending on, what's in the air. And I think it's, yeah, it's like really like this show is such a cool like study of just like human psychiatry, like psychology, and even though it's in this like really extreme setting, it's like very relatable, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. I get like really, I just was realizing that because like while I was prepping for this interview, I was looking at my questions and I was like, I feel like they're, I feel like I'm like being, I could tell I was being protective over the characters. Is that make sense? And I was reading like articles about like the cannibalism and all these things. And I was like, why is it that we try so hard to like put things in boxes and to like label what is right, what is wrong? And I think that the show examines like the harm of that. I mean, a lot of what these women are going through later in their lives is the trauma also of like not being able to forgive themselves for what they did, right or wrong, in the wilderness.
Yeah, and I think that even coming into the crash, they all come with their own, from all different walks of life and their own struggles. And then you add stuff on top of that. It's easy to be black and white. And I think one of my favorite parts of this show is that you get to see people, take steps forward, but also go back. And I think that's one of the most relatable things about,
Yeah, and it's like what a powerful sort of metaphor for like the shame society just puts on young girls and women in general. And the pressures to be perfect, the pressures to make the right decisions under pressure.
The way to act around in certain situations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Put people in like a girl's locker room and see how girls really go down.
Yeah, totally. You mentioned adult Lottie. It's been Simone has just been killing it. She is, oh gosh, I'm such a fan of hers. And I just love, y'all are just like the perfect pair.
I love her so much.
Let's talk about like the inner child for a second. Cause I think too, like these women, the adult versions of these characters are so afraid to kind of face their inner children. And what do you think, if this is kind of like a fun but also hard question, if your Lottie and Simone's Lottie could kind of meet each other, what would you like for them to say to each other?
Ooh, yeah, that is a hard question. It's so interesting because when Simone and I met in pre-production beforehand and trying to figure out how we would share this character, we both kind of came to the realization that they were in such different worlds almost, but there was this thread that still held them together of some stuff they haven't figured out. I think older Lottie would tell younger Lottie to trust herself more. And then I think younger Lottie would say to older Lottie to look after herself.
Yeah.
Are they kind of the same answers? They're different, but
they're different. They are different. And it's so true. I was thinking about that also. Like, well, we know now in this season that adult Lottie is the, leader of, a commune of sorts, of a wellness center of sorts. And she's done so much work on herself. And we see that fear that she's still afraid of her visions, and she's still trying to grapple with like, are they a gift? Are they a curse? Are they both? Can both exist at the same time? But I think something that's still true to her then and now is the power of community.
Mhm.
And this idea that we're, you know, we need to feed and nurture that community.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think I was talking about it in my last interview of just like backstory of where I thought Lottie would be, in like who she would be as a person in school and in life before the crash. And I think she was such an empath, that she still is such an empath, but in her younger days, maybe that is what puts a slight wall up because she's so sensitive to those around her, whereas she's made it her power when she's gotten older.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also shows like the constant growth that we have to do for ourselves and what can sort of come of that. And like the fact that, she was, it's no spoiler that she was committed to a mental institution post crash, and then to see her come out of the other side of that with so much sort of growth and really like owning her. She owns that darkness. Like I think it's like, and we see how powerful that can be. And she's really leaned into like her gentle side also, which we see too, like with younger. It's just like these characters are just so incredible. It's like I could talk about it for hours.
Lottie's one of Lottie's strengths is her darkness, even though it might not seem like it is to her. It's what opens her up to be able to feel those around her. She just hasn't tapped into it with herself yet, at least in my 90s side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so fascinating. What has sort of playing Lottie and being part of this series, was it taught you most about yourself?
Oh, wow. That I could probably do with trusting myself a little bit more in both work and in all other aspects of my life. Um, on that I would also say that what I just said for Lottie, that I would say that I think I don't even like the label of darkness for it, but whatever my mess is also my strength.
Yeah.
And I think Lottie has taught me that. And also just working with such incredible women and cast, and just watching them move in certain ways and trust and feel comfortable in who they are. I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons.
Yeah, I was listening to Melanie talk the other day in an interview, and she was talking about just how proud and cool it is that this is, such a female ensemble series, and for it to like how that in itself is so cool and that in itself is so inspiring. But then on top of that, for it to be received so well, both critically and by the fans and by the audience, how it's just the cherry on the top of this like whole experience. And I was like, and she was saying how that didn't really exist when she was younger and that it was so unique for in her career. And I just kept thinking about then how cool that for all of y'all who play, the teams in this show, that this has now become a norm. This is going to become the norm. And, that being like a full circle thing must be just so special.
Yeah, it's amazing. Melanie is, I can't say like enough about her. She is like the onset mom, the best number one that is. And she really does look after us and give us that like guiding light that we kind of need. But I do feel incredibly lucky I just sometimes when I get the scripts and I'm like, oh, we get to go here with this character and here with this character. It's not just this two-dimensional flat woman, an idea of a woman. And I find that so fun, and I feel so lucky to be able to do that.
We're so grateful that y'all do it. I mean, it's like it's really inspiring to watch. All right. Well, last but not least, we're about, I would say, halfway through the season. Or this is so tricky. Sorry again, but what is like a word or a vibe that best describes the second half of this season?
maybe just that, just that reaction.
Buckle up.
The vibe of the next half of the season is delightful chaos.
Woo!
I find it delightful. Maybe others won't.
I do too. I mean, I say the more chaotic, the better. And it is a delight. It's been such a delight to just watch again this show just getting better and better. And just congratulations on all of it. This was so lovely. Thank you for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much. They're beautiful questions.